Yay! Welcome, everybody. We have, because it's the beginning of the year, by the time this publishes, we have a book writing coach. And so many of you at year end expressed interest in 2020's the year that I wanted to get Kim O'Hara on here. So Kim O'Hara is an intuitive book coach with high profile clients that trust her through the coaching process in writing their books, not just because of her 2 decades in Hollywood, but because of the navigation through her own personal trauma journey, which we're going to talk about a little today. She guides them as influencers to share their epic journeys. Her clients include the creator of Good Morning America, the founder of The Brow Gal, and other successful influencers who speak of their unique experiences in careers ranging from public health to global money exchange. Kim hosts an online monthly workshop called Activate Your Story. And this encourages business owners and entrepreneurs to incorporate their personal brand into their story. Kim is a nationwide main stage speaker, as well as a guest on numerous radio shows and podcasts. I was lucky to get her. She engages in audiences with her depth and wit, and she is funny. She will keynote the Young Eager Writers Conference in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2020, and she's a published author of the memoir called Kicking Abuse in the Ass. You can read a little bit more about her at astoryinside.com, and we'll put the link in there. You can also access her speaking reel if you would like to have her on as a guest. So welcome, Kim.
Thank you.
So I have to tell you guys, I just reconnected with Kim. It's just so bizarre on LinkedIn. We actually met a couple of years ago, I believe, at the joint venture Inner Circle. Was that?
I know it was also LinkedIn. I feel like it's always been a LinkedIn experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was at an event, but okay. So kind of funny. We lost track of each other and we just reconnected. So this is kind of fun to have her on. So what is the difference between a regular writing coach and an intuitive writing coach?
Well, I'm a book coach. So I focus primarily on books. And let me turn off my email so we don't keep hearing that dinging. That's very annoying.
That was my ding.
Well, I was like, I'm ding free on my side now. So I work with the whole author. So while they come to me, and it's been a long time that they've been waiting to write their book. And so what comes with that is a lot of the resistance, a lot of the fear. Do I have the time to do it? Am I a writer? So we work with a lot of the mindset first, so that when they go into writing the book, they have the foundation and that they have the emotional support that they need, because it's a furious process. As you know, being a writer, as I know being a writer, when you're in it, you're going. I don't believe that we should take it slow. I believe that when you're in it, you need to move through it as quickly as you can and just let the creative muses guide you. So what's happening is while the clients are writing their book, I'm intuitively seeing places that they can step up in their career, right? So I'm like, have you thought about doing a serial podcast? Have you thought about speaking over in this particular area? You know, I've had clients that are like, well, I just came to you to write the book. And the next thing you know, they have a global, like international company based on the mission that starts to come forth in the book. So it's really exciting to work with someone as an author who's got a whole persona that can then go out in the world.
That is exciting. And I see a lot of that too. They come for one little piece and then they start to see the possibilities. So it is really exciting. But let's go back to that fear. So I know from writing my own books that fear kind of creeps in, that I always call authors sort of a weird group, because a lot of them, I don't know if you call it passive aggressive or what, but like they want to be bestsellers, they want to be famous, but they don't want to be seen.
Yeah, well, I know, because when I was a screenwriter, I would hide for like 8 hours, for a medium that's very public and very visual. And so I have a very soft spot in my heart for writers and isolation. A lot of the people I work with have huge personalities, so it's very funny. I think that's what they struggle with most, is a lot of them don't like to be in a room alone by themselves. They have always lived these lives of hustle and out there and be there and do this, and now they're being asked to sit in a room alone with their thoughts, which is why they like having a book coach, because they know they're not like completely alone, right? Like I'm in the space with them. I held a end of the year client appreciation event last Saturday, and I brought 15 clients together. And what the common theme was that most of them needed permission to believe that their story was valuable.
Interesting.
That is the biggest fear. When they would read out loud an excerpt from their book or why they're writing the book, and the rest of the group was like, thumbs up, you're amazing, you're going to change the world with that. You saw them like, oh my God, like it's going to be okay. Like I'm going to be okay. Yet every week they're going in and writing something that they have a feeling inside, maybe this is like a bunch of bull crap, you know?
Yes.
And so the fear is very nuanced.
Uh-huh. But
That's
it's
what
all
I find.
but it's also very real because that's part of that journey of writing a book. I've shared this before with my audience. I'm a firm believer that writer's block is sort of permission from the universe, like I'm going to let you write this. No doubt about it, but you're going to heal something. You're going to stop, take a breath and heal something while I'm letting you write it. I always find that it's sort of that kind of journey, which might be why I quit writing for a while. No, I'm just kidding.
You had to heal. You had some healing to
So
do.
tell us about your book. Your book was kind of a healing journey, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have always been a writer ever since I was little, and that's how I've healed. Always, the journals and always the writing is a way to feel, to know myself, right? To hear the words that are inside of me. And so when I faced the denial that I had, carried forth for 44 years of the abuse, the best way I knew to unpack it was in a book. And I broke it down by categories. Here's how abuse affected my spirituality. Here's how abuse affected my sexuality. Here's how abuse affected me finance, because it touches literally every crevice of you. Nothing is left untouched, no pun intended, by abuse. Do you know what I mean? So in writing the book and also giving writing prompts as I went through of what I used to write through it, allows other abuse survivors to then take the book like a manual, like to go, oh, I'm going to do these, prompts and go through it in their own way. And the reason why I wrote it was there was only one book out called Courage to Heal. And it was like this big, and it was written in like 1973. And it
Uh-huh.
was basically how to make it through, like white knuckle it. And I was like, that's not the answer.
Uh-huh.
Like it had a tear out that you hand your partner and it explains you. And I was like, I don't want to give this to anybody. Like, it's like, I'm always going to be damaged and you always have to be nice to me. And just remember at any time I might have I was like, no, I'm not signing up for that. I'm not handing this to anybody. And that's when I
Right.
started writing the book.
That is so amazing because when I hear stories like that, it is a lot of victimization and you're coming from a place of empowerment with them. So that's
Hmm.
really, really cool. Yeah. Handing it off to your partner and saying, this, I'm not going to take responsibility. This is your problem is not the answer. And it's
Yeah.
not empowerment for women either. I think there are elements of our society right now who kind of, have that blame game. It's the outer stuff that's causing it, and really, it's
Hmm.
the inner stuff. And you're right; it does touch every bit of your life. So it sounds like a book that was much needed out in the marketplace.
Yes,
So
yes. Now, one thing I don't do enough of that I talk to my clients about all the time, we don't always do what we tell our clients to do. It's easier to tell people do it, is I didn't put any marketing money behind it.
uh-huh,
So I did get a publisher who is well known, and that doesn't mean anything. That
right.
really. And I think that I wrote it and I put it out there, and I, needed to publish a book as a book coach. I think that's also an important thing to do, to show
Yes.
your clients you're willing to do it too. Um, I felt like the journey was kind of over for me. I didn't want to put a lot of marketing money behind it. I didn't want to travel America talking about sexual abuse. I wanted it to be evergreen, and I wanted it to come up whenever it needed to come up, and the right people that needed to find it would find it. And that's how I've been the last 2 years. So I don't think the book's over and done. I think it's going to have another life. I just I didn't take that like touring author route.
That's so interesting because that's the difference between what you do and I do, the platform building part of it and
Exactly. So important.
collecting that crowd. And that's actually what I'm working with some of Kim's clients on is how do we take that and really monetize it now? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what, well, she has monetized it in a way, just not in the context of what's in your book with it. So
Right.
that's very interesting, but it does highlight what most authors think. And you and I were talking about this right before we jumped on about how by the time you're done with the book, like you are so done with the book.
You're like, I don't want, I'm like, I'm done. Like I put it on the shelf, like I'll do a couple IG posts on it and it's over, you know?
Yeah.
I do have a marketing person now who's asking me to put photos of the book out periodically. So I just like this week, there'll be like a photo of the book with like a Christmas flower, you know what I mean? Like, so I am doing that because the truth of the matter is, when people do read it, they are changed forever. So as a service, I should be doing more, but I'm so focused on my clients doing more. That's really where I get my joy is like, I'm a healer and I'm an empath and I'm a giver. And so all my energy emotes out to their books, their journey, how I can help them, what I see them doing, whether it's podcasts with you or platforms from the stage or ways to get their message out. Because I've seen how much time and energy they've put into this book. It's got to go farther.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely does. Because for most nonfiction authors, it's a tool. It's not the end all be all. You're not going to retire and, like 5 million copies like Jack Canfield. For most people, that doesn't happen. So you have to figure out how to make that bigger money with it. So talk a little bit about the how you work with people, because my experience is with people, and it's most people, when they decide to write a book, they don't hire a coach, and then they do a barfa book.
Then they call me up and they're like, hey, do you want to take my book and read it? I'm like, not really.
Yeah, right.
You can throw it away and start again. I have had people do that because they've wanted to work with me so badly that they're willing to take that risk. And they've said to me a couple months down the road, I am so glad we did not deal with that book I wrote before I met you. Mm-hmm. Because I tell them that book's a draft. You did it on your own. Good for you. Congratulations. Now we're going to do the work in a structured, systematic, supported way. And the best gems of that dump draft you did all alone in your cabin or wherever you were, they're going to end up in this book if they're called to end up in this book. Mm-hmm. Great ideas will not die. In fact, they'll be emphasized in our work together. And that's what they've found is they've been like, wow, if I had just gone with that idea on my own, collaborating with you, I realized it had a whole other level and there were 14 more stories I needed to tell. And I created a product while thinking about that. And now I want to do this and that. And I'm like, that's just collaboration, mm-hmm. So when people come to me and typically private clients will do the 6-month journey with me, and that gets them to where I hand them to you, right? I say, we've written a fantastic book. It might need a red line. It always does, but we're ready, right? Or they do the Dream to Publishable in 12 weeks with me, which I've had some fabulous clients do recently. And that's more of a group. I'm still coaching them, mm-hmm. but they are being coached once a week in a group versus privately. Right. But I still read all their work and I'm still just as, passionate about what they do. They just want to put less skin in the game first. Mm-hmm. They end up spending as much because they keep doing drafts with me. But right. It's just two different kinds of people. Some people are like, I'm in 6-month program to the end with you. Other people are like, let's do the first draft and let me get to know you a little bit. And then typically they're like, you're fabulous. Let's keep going.
And that is so important because you're kind of a double check on their authenticity within the book. Because if they're not, if they're really being guarded, there's that fine line when I say barfa book between TMI and vulnerability. You want to talk about
that? Yes. I always tell them in the first draft, like, write about what you need to write about. Like, get it out now. Like, we'll cut what we need to cut. I call it getting around to the other side so your book's for the reader, not you. And anything that feels like it's just for them gratuitously needs to go, or it needs to be reframed so that the reader feels like the book was written for them. I think that's the problem with a lot of books that are out there. People are like, well, I was being real. It's like, no, you dumped on us and we don't care about you because you didn't make us feel more important than you. When you read a book, you want to feel like you're important than the writer. If you feel
Yes.
like the writer's more important than you, then you're like, forget it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is so, so true, especially in a book that's about healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's their point is to have people resonate with them, but they make it so much about them that people can't connect.
They can't connect.
And think about
Yeah.
that for a minute. If I go out to you and I'm just all about me, it's all drama all the time, you want to run. You don't want to connect.
Right. Right. And there's books, I think that there's books that I read, like Dr. Wayne Dyer just did. He did his memoir before he died. I can see clearly now. And he's talking about himself, but he's also like making it relevant to like, here's a choice you can make based on my experiences of how you can live your life. And I'd always close that book at the end of the night after reading a segment and be like, oh, I can do that differently. If Dr. Dyer says he can do it, then I can do it. That's a successful, and it's like a memoir, really. I mean, that's a successful memoir when you feel like that person has empowered you to also do it. So I say to clients that have been through like really hard times, I'm like, write it in a way that you want to say to other people, if this happens to you, you're not alone. I've been through this too. And here's what you could do earlier that I didn't do. Because I didn't see my triggers or my blind spots or my limiting beliefs or,
Mhm.
all the stuff that we talk about in the self-help books.
Right. Who does though? No, I'm just kidding.
I know, I know.
That's why they're
I
blind spots.
I know they are. They are. They are. They're
So
blind
what's
spots.
the best thing about working with writers?
So a lot of the people that come to me aren't writers. That's the one thing I want to say. That's why I say I'm not a writing coach. They come to me, they mostly have never written before. They might have written marketing materials or they wrote 30 years ago. They might have taken one class. That is one of the biggest parts of what I do is to work with them to find their voice and become a writer. So it's almost like we're making them writers
Oh,
in the
nice.
process, right?
Mhm.
So I hardly say I'm working with writers. I'm working with first time authors. I'm working with people that want to be better writers, that want to feel like they're writers. If you asked any of my clients, even today after writing their first book, whether they're writers, they would still pause.
Wow.
I don't know if they would feel like they have earned that right. They would go, well, I just authored one book. And I'm always saying to them, like, you're a writer.
Mhm.
You're a writer if you write. I mean, Brenda Uland had this great book, So You Think You Can Write. And it's about how anybody can write. You just have to do it. You just have to practice it. So of course, when they come to me and they're not writers, a lot of people come to me that have never written anything before, but it's not a shock because in the movie business, I always work with first time directors and first time writers too.
Mhm.
So
That's
I'm used to, I spent 20 years going, okay, when you walk on set, here's what you're going to see, because they've never been there.
uh-huh.
So I feel like that's sort of where I'm good. I'm really good at that. Really good at that. And then if I got someone that was experienced that was writing their third book that wanted to do it differently, I'd be able to rise up to that level too. I mean, there's different levels, but my sweet spot is that first foray.
That is awesome. And what would you do for someone like me? I'm not a great writer, but I'm a good storyteller.
You probably are a better writer than you think. It just takes a matter of changing your syntax, changing your grammatical construction, and getting rid of a lot of dump words. I
Mm.
can go through someone's book and show them where they started a sentence going, that is the way it needs to be. Or it is such a great feeling to know we went sailing, right? Versus turning it around and saying, sailing makes me feel like I'm flying on the top of the moon. Now there's a sentence, right?
Mhm.
But the other one they wrote was just like what someone would write who's not a writer. So I just keep showing them, I keep showing them, I keep showing them. And gradually, one of the biggest joys I have is when they turn in a chapter and they've written one of those sentences and you're like, oh, yes, right? Because I'm constantly like, don't say I remember, and don't say sometimes, and don't say probably, and don't, I'm going through this with them over and over. Are they going to nail it on the first book? Probably
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But if they write a second book, they'll be shocked at how different they are.
Interesting. Very interesting. So tell us what we do in the Activate Your Story workshop.
So the Activate Your Story workshops are currently down. So I
Oh,
probably should have taken that out of the bio. I was doing that once a month to give people a toe dip into, and then roll into my Dream to Publishable 12-week program.
mhm.
It was something that I have wanted to automate. It's definitely something that people don't have to be live for. They can get the same teachings from me recorded. So we're in the process of recording it and possibly making it available for free. Right now, we're just kind of figuring out what it is because people love it. It's just not, people can't do an hour and a half in the middle of the day.
Mhm.
And so they tend to want the recording. And I figure, well, if they're just going to want the recording, I might as well just record it.
That's so funny because when we do our workshops, they're 2 1/2 days, and people always buy the recordings. But I feel like we give them so much that they have to have the recordings to catch up because it's
Right.
a lot. It's a lot to sit still.
It's a lot. Yeah. So we're playing with that format. I have a program called What is an Outline? And
Okay,
that's on Thinkific. Um, and that's an incredible deal. I mean, that's $397 and you basically learn how to outline an entire book. So
nice.
people could go forward with that and do their own book if they have the accountability and they don't care about the collaboration. And so
Hmm.
that's something that I have created as well. I want to my goal is to always help people in some way, whether they go the long run with me or whether I get a little taste of the Story Inside community into their bodies and into their minds, to sprinkle a little of that extra high quality juice on them.
Oh, that's sweet. So, where can we find you, and where can we find out more? Do you have tips?
Sure.
Have something to give?
Yeah, I have four surefire ways to know you have a book to write is on my website. That's our newest opt-in, and that's fabulous. It's like a bunch of videos and I have a story to tell sheet and a lot of active work for them to do. And that's at astoryinside.com, my website. I also have a newsletter that has now become every week. And
Oh,
in that newsletter, I'm writing a blog as well. And that's tons of teachable moments, like why we have to write 3 drafts, or like what we were talking about, what to do if you don't think you're a writer, or how to write through busy schedules. So it's a lot of the stuff I coach
uh-huh.
and I've put it into blogs. And so we're just kind of making the website and a Story Inside community for anybody that really wants to be a part of it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today. And for all of you, go over to her website and check out what she's doing because it is the beginning of the year. And I know how many of you said, okay, this is the year to get going. And we can get going with you anytime, right?
January 15th, we are enrolling the Dream to Publishable in 12 Weeks group. I take 5 people in that group.
Okay.
So that's open for enrollment right now, and anytime for private, of course.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.